So hearing you, it's quite amazing that Harry, as a youngster of 7, 8, was really able to cope with that intense period. And in my mind, you know, children of, let's say, 0 to 3, 4, they're so young, it's hard for them to reflect on what's going on. It's almost like things just are happening in the background. But from that age, let's say 4, to when you're describing now, a lot of the time that we're talking about was taken up by him being unwell.
Yes.
He'd had a period where he was well, obviously, but in terms of where his personality was at, it's just remarkable to me that he was able to cope with that so well. And that comes over to me most intensely when you say about other people's reactions, because they like to have him around, and he was like that confident, the joyful person who was almost like able to do what they would do if it wasn't for illness. Do you know what I mean? Somebody would come onto the ward and be the normal child that wasn't an unwell child. That's probably why the nurses liked it, because they could see him as a person and not just the illness, which is tempting to see just the illness all the time.
Yeah.
And you had that 3 years, didn't you, when he was in the maintenance phase? And how much did life get back to normal in that period? Could it go back entirely to normal, or was it just a different phase of being unwell and on red alert? Because you mentioned about the 3-month monitoring cycle.
No, I mean, there was so many. Our life had completely changed. You know, our first home we had to sell because our income reduced. We'd moved into a new home that we were just settling in, really, but we knew we couldn't even afford that house, you know, with the journey that we'd been through, and we shouldn't have gone for it, but we didn't feel that we got a lot of support when we entered into that, and we thought it was our only option. And during that maintenance period, you know, my husband gave up work to look after Harry because Harry was well and he was going to school, and I then, because I couldn't stand to see my husband stressing about the bills and everything mounting up, and every month we're struggling and we're getting letters off the mortgage company, and I knew I could do something about it because I earned more money than him. So I went back to work. He gave up to be Harry's carer because it was still, you know, Harry sent home from school, he's got headaches, and we couldn't put that responsibility on anybody else. So my husband became Harry's carer for a while, which was lovely because it then gave them that time to be together.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I went back to work, but a job that I absolutely loved and thrived, you know, and very career minded, and was always worked like every parent, you know, you want the best for your children. I just couldn't, again, you know, you can't function, and I changed as a person, and I found it really hard thinking, what am I doing? You know, I've got a son at home and his brother and sister who have been through the most horrific. It's not over, there's no closure.
Yes.
What am I doing? And I got home and I used to pull up outside my house, which was the cheapest house that we could find in our area and we couldn't afford, and I used to want to torch it.
Really?
I hated it that much because it kept me away from us just being together. You know, time is the most precious thing, even if we're all well. But to know you're going through that journey, and I had to, because of the house, you know, which we knew we were falling behind with all the payments for anyway, you know, we just couldn't, we'd built up, you know, with the extra costs that are incurred because of cancer, your petrol, your parking and your to and fro and food. It was really bizarre and a new norm for us. And that was hard because the stability's also taken away.
Yes.
Or it was for us because we're an average working class family. So for the children to experience that, and as parents, we just really felt like we'd let not just Harry down, but his brother and sister too.
Yeah.
You know, what they knew of Christmases and birthdays and the regular treats and trips couldn't happen, you know.
A lot of the normal things are squashed.
Absolutely.
By all those medical issues.
You know, and we did our hardest, you know, in terms of, you know, and it was lovely because we'd still go and have picnics in the park and take the rounders back and the, you know, the football and things, and they were probably more enjoyable than, you know, than what we used to do, so to speak. But we still got that quality time, but it was hard, but you just get on with whatever you face, and that's what we did. And Harry and Louis and Danny were all back at school and all doing well, and we just tried to make it as normal as we could, you know. And obviously we always got a bit on tenterhooks and probably a bit anxious every 3 months, because we thought, oh, you know, okay, we're going to be all right for the next 3 months, and tomorrow the results could change everything. But everything was always all right.
Would you say it was particularly difficult for you because you changed your role from being the key person looking after Harry to being somebody back at work and your partner, your husband, was actually doing it? Did that shift of role, was that particularly hard? Because in a way, what we're talking about here is about what's important in life. And you'd observed, you know, through illness, that certain things were important, the family, being around for them.
It gives perspective.
And I'm just wondering whether that change of role, which you discussed as a family, and you decided it's the best option, it's the only way to survive financially. It doesn't mean to say emotionally it's the best option.
No, it wasn't.
And I just wonder whether that was adding to the pressure.
It did, you know, and I got to a point where, although I could ping on a smile, you know, as I think I do now, it's but yeah, I was extremely depressed, and it was putting pressure on me and my husband. I offered to, because I couldn't stand, you know, the five of us were my life, you know, as I was my husband's life, you know. But to see him, his pride go, and his employer at the time wasn't very supportive, and I just couldn't stand the way that he was, and I felt that I can change that, I can make him feel better, I can make that go away. Yeah. But I hated the fact that cancer was tearing us, you know, apart, and it wouldn't allow us to just be together. It's, and that's for that period.
I think this is a side of illness that people don't appreciate.
No.
It's the pressure on the family, and also the financial stress.
Yeah.
You know, that if you don't have good financial means, you're in a kind of catch-22, because you feel you should be there all the time, but yet you also feel we have to bring in the income. Yes. And it's a very, very delicate balance, that.
Yeah,
it's very
definitely. hard. You know, I carried on, and I tried as hard as I could, and it was just destroying me inside. And then, you know, we swapped then again, you know, I said I just cannot function, you know, it's, and we went back to, you know, the role reversal, if you like. But I think your goals change, your perception on everything changes, your outlet changes. And I'd worked in recruitment, and the role that I loved, you know, but when you then have people that come through your door and perhaps haven't got that zest or attitude for life. Sure. And I go home to a little boy every day that's, you know, living life, making every minute of it, wants to be here, and you get people that just cannot be bothered. Yes. Oh, I find it very hard. Yeah, I find it very, very hard to actually represent people. Yeah. I mean, don't you think a lot of people in life take life for granted? Yes. And often, we're all guilty of this from time to time. Unless something comes to shake you up, you don't necessarily realise what's good, you know, what we have, and a lot of the assets that we have, and also what's important in life. I describe it as people being on autopilot, that you can just go from one issue to the next, which seems big, but it's actually quite small. Yeah. And until something disturbs that, you don't really think about it. As a society, you know, I think ultimately because we all try and do the best for our families, you know, but doing the best doesn't necessarily mean about having those materialistic things. You know, you all want to do your family proud. I wanted my kids to have the nicest things, which is why we'd, like any other family, worked so hard. Okay, we hadn't really got anything wow, but we were comfortable. But you get so caught up in all of that, you know, work, and there's a saying, isn't there? You know, you work to live, not live to work. Yes. And time is just so precious with your family, and I think it's always having that at the forefront. That's more important than absolutely anything. And I think we all need something to go somewhere, to experience something. And even if we haven't been through an illness, we can all go somewhere and experience something to actually make us realise that. Not that we should have to. Yes. You know, take a step back.
I agree.